Dragon's Dogma 2 has been surrounded by topics of microtransaction, bugs, gameplay crashes. You've heard it so many times that I'm actually going to talk about the game, the actual playing of the game. I know I'm one of the 15 people that actually got to play it, but I figured I'd at least make a good review about it and actually talk about the gameplay instead of what everybody else is apparently talking about. I will cover what Capcom has said because they said they will fix the problem, so I'll cover that at the end. But I want to talk more on like gameplay, the multiplayer aspect of the game, the pawns, whatever else. And then, like I said, I'll finish off with the Capcom response to all the problems. I only got like 15 minutes of gameplay in the very beginning, and I lost my save twice, so I stopped trying to record. So any footage you'll see is going to be from very early in the game, like probably like literally my first 15 minutes in the game. But no, I'll just say it's not for spoil. I'll just say it's for so I don't spoil anything. The gameplay though, I will say that no specifics on the combat because I think that actually playing the classes themselves is going to give you a much better experience than say actually looking up a guide, how to use this class, what does this class do versus this class. I will say there are very big differences in the class. I played Thief and Warlock, and Warlock was I prefer the Thief play. I prefer the Thief. It just fits my style of play, whatever else. But I will say the jump between classes is pretty significant. It's a completely different game. The way you play, even when you change up abilities on a certain, like on the class you are playing, the abilities do matter, and it is fun to swap them out. Like I've tried everything, but maybe like 3 or 4 combinations of Thief abilities, and I liked them all about equally. There wasn't really much damage loss when you switch it up, so it's like each playstyle, however you want to play the game, it does function pretty well. And yeah, the party members low-key matter more than any amount of skill swapping you can do on your character. Your gear matters just as much as theirs. The party aspect of the game is obviously like the biggest part of it, but that being said, your actual gameplay choices for your character matter, but you can't. You probably could beat the game without it, but it's a lot different of a game when you lack that. The variety of techs, and like I said, changing up between classes. Like I said, I could go into a bunch of details about it, but I actually do think that experiencing the game for yourself and trying out them will be much more fun than looking up, well, what does the highest damage technically? That's my opinion, but the combat is so versatile. Even with the 2 classes I played, it was ridiculous. And so I'm excited to try the other 4 as I keep playing through the game. I will say the UI for combat on PC is pretty rough. I played it for like 5 minutes, like my first 15 minutes. And then after that, I was like, I couldn't do it anymore. So I switched up to controller and I haven't had any problems since. I will say the UI, like actually like your item UI or your pause menu is a lot better on PC than controller, obviously, just using a mouse. I prefer it anyway. But the separation of the items, like they all look different. It's visibly different, so it's easy to maneuver whenever you need to sell something. Tying into that though, when you sell stuff, you can't buy back from what I've seen. And that can cause some problems I've seen for myself anyway. I accidentally sold, I'll just say it, a certain letter from somebody, and it soft locked me for a little bit. So that type of thing, like had I been able to buy that back, and I accidentally sold it, I hadn't meant to sell it. I mean, I was hovering over something, I accidentally brushed left and double spammed X, and it was too late. So a buyback option in the shops would be really nice, but it's not needed. Like accidents happen, whatever. You should learn from your mistakes, I guess. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But personally, I like buyback options in ARPGs. It does make it a little bit less punishing when you do that. But the menu itself, the actual pause menu and UI outside of that is really useful. The variety you have with it is pretty nice. You start with your items tab, and like I said, they're all unique, making it easy to sort through and organize, and especially when you're depositing items into your storage chest, makes it easy to recognize what's what instead of like a game Monster Hunter World where all your long swords look identical minus the color change. There's all these different things that make it slightly easier to maneuver the UI, and I do think that's a big thing, and they actually did pretty good. You know, I think that's a very good positive for the game. You have the map. I don't like the UI in the map, and it's a preference only, so take this with a grain of salt, but the map, I just don't like having to hit R3 and then X to clear waypoints. It's just, it is tedious, and I don't know. I'd rather, I like the right button click. I don't know. I mean, I'm a simple guy if I can remember Skyrim shit, but yeah, I don't like the map UI. Is it a big problem for me? No. No. Am I not going to play the game? No. I'm going to play this game a fuck ton. Yeah, the map UI is just frustrating for me personally. Take this with a grain of salt. The quest tab. Quest tab is honestly where I spent the majority of my time in the menu. I can't, for the life of me, I could not remember where to go, or like the area on the map where it shows you. I'll just forget where that's at. I forget who I'm supposed to talk to. I'll forget the name of an NPC, whatever. And so the quest tab was actually really nice. And for what it is, it's actually pretty detailed for being a story first, exploration first gameplay. Like, this isn't your Skyrim waypoint on the map and you just walk straight towards it and you can climb up a mountain and get there. You actually kind of have to plan out where you're going for your quest. You can also do a quest on the way to another quest if you actually have that big of a brain. I've done that once and my brain melted, so I know that I don't have that big of a brain. Every other one, I just kind of went one side of the map all the way to the other, all the way to the other, and skipped quests. For the text, it is pretty simple to understand. Like, my 3rd grade reading comprehension can understand the quest text. And that does make me pretty happy that they did a good job of explaining the quests instead of just saying, here you go, or the Elden Ring mode where it's like, we aren't even going to mention who you're supposed to talk to, and we're not going to tell you where in the map. Hopefully you find them. Hopefully you cross it, and in this entire map, hopefully you come across that person. So I kind of like what they did with it. I thought that it's honestly probably my favorite type of storytelling and questing is when you have to read the quest, but the quest actually gives you information about what you need to do. It's not just speculative reading. And then the last but not least, I think, which was pretty interesting, was the history tab. I'm actually really glad that they did this. Compare it to something like Monster Hunter World, where there are a bunch of different characters and you can kind of look into them and talk to them, but there's not really a log that I can remember. And it's just nice to build that world around the characters that are in it, and it has like stuff about the characters, what they like, where they're at, and that's just helpful, especially for questing. If there's somebody you need to talk to, look them up in the log and they'll be there. So but anyway, no spoilers. Hilda's mine. Don't talk to her ever. Anyway, the multiplayer aspect, this is my second main point. When I was looking into the game at first, like this was months ago, I thought it was planned to be a multiplayer game. I thought that you could swap out your main pawn for your friend and you could go through the world, do whatever, kind of Baldur's Gate 3 style. Instead, the pawns are completely AI. So if you had that misconception, yeah, no, it's not multiplayer. It's multiplayer in the aspect of you borrow other people's pawns. So those are other real players. They did make those pawns and you borrow them. So it's a different aspect than what I thought. But now that I've gotten into it, I'm actually pretty impressed with the quality that they put into the pawns. Especially with the borrowing system and the reward system for giving people rewards and receiving RC for people using your pawn. I think it's actually pretty intuitive for what the mechanic actually is. It incentivizes well-made, cool-looking, or sexy-looking pawns. And everything about when you choose a pawn matters. The armor, the skills, their personality, like whether they like to run off and attack or they're kind-hearted and like to support. Like, that stuff's actually pretty cool to mess around with. It doesn't make a huge gameplay difference, to be fair, but it does make a difference. It's noticeable. You're not going to start losing fights because you have the wrong personality on, but having your fighter or warrior run off ahead, it can make a big difference. It does. The multiplayer aspect, even though it's AI, is still there. Like, you kind of, with the fist bumping and high-fiving your teammates and stuff after a battle, it feels kind of like a multiplayer emote. It's not, obviously, but then you also have in the back of your mind that that's somebody else's pawn. It's surprisingly of a multiplayer feel for not being a online cooperative multiplayer necessarily. I will say that with the pawns, it does matter if you lose one from your party. The difficulty does scale a lot. Losing one person in your party, especially like a crucial healer, tank, whatever, you notice almost instantaneously. And especially if you go into a big fight with it, I've lost probably most of the times I've died has been because I only have 3 of 4 or 2 of 4 of my people in my party. That being said, the AI does like to unalive itself if you're next to cliffs or bridges. So railings on bridges could be a good fix. Just throwing railings on so that your pawns don't decide to see if they can swan dive from a 1,000-foot cliff. A minor issue. I've had it happen 3 separate times, and I was right next to town, thank God, so I just went back and rezzed them. But the AI can be a little bit delirious, but so can people. Like, I'm sure if I was playing with my friend, that motherfucker would jump off a cliff anyway. So it's pretty realistic for what it is. Then those are my general thoughts on the gameplay. I will say exploration feels good. That's honestly what I've spent the majority. I have not progressed through the story. I have done every side quest that has come up, and I've been through 4 towns, so that's probably like 30 quests maybe. So it's not nothing crazy, but that I wanted to play this game like I played Baldur's Gate 3. This gives me the exact same feel, completely different game, but exact same feel as Baldur's Gate 3. There's always something around the next corner. Oh, you found 2 chests? Well, there's a 3rd one. Did you go upstairs? Did you look on the top of the rock over to the right? Well, there's another chest. Go look at it. That type of exploration is like so endorphin pumping for me. Like I feel so good finding stuff like that. And it's just like I said, I'm playing the game in the same mindset as Baldur's Gate 3 of looking for quests, exploring each area before I move on, something like that. It's just a different style of game than I play other ARPGs, which kind of incentivize beating the story and then going back and doing the side content. The side content will get you through the story, to be honest. Like, I don't know. I love how they did it. I think the questing ties into it so well. And I thought that the actual gameplay, again, I know I'm one of 15 people that's played the game, sure. But I enjoy it. I think it's really done well. The FPS loss hasn't been a major issue for me. Like, I'll lose FPS, lose frames, whatever, but the gameplay is so fun and just endorphin pumping, like I said, that I don't mind it. And I there's nothing else to say. Now, that being said, the frame losses and everything else, this is Capcom's response. So this is what I said. I'm just going to talk about the crashes and bugs fixes. Of course, they're going to fix this. I said this in my last video when I was reacting to Asmongold's review. They will fix this. It is obvious. Anybody that thinks they're not is delusional. The option of starting a new game. This, I was kind of harping on people for in my last video. Now, I don't take it back. Make a character you want to play with and play with that character until the end. And then you can start a new game once they add it, whatever. I knew they were going to add it. I told you they were going to add it. And the only reason I think that the option of starting a new game is important is in case you sell the stuff. There's no buyback option. If there was a buyback option, I would say there's still no need to start a new game until you beat the game, whatever. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. They're adding a new game. Paid DLC. The main point of this, I'm not even going to talk about other items, can be obtained in-game or as paid DLC. It's in the game already. I wouldn't stress it. They're admitting that they're not taking it out. They're showing that they don't have remorse for putting microtransactions in. You're not going to change their mind. You can go try, sure, waste your time, but I'm not going to spend time on that. Everything that's in the DLC can be paid for. Or everything that can be paid for is in game. Jesus. And then the frame rate. This part is the one that I want to spend the most time on. If you haven't played, there are a ton of NPCs. There's a reason that I brought up that history tab in the settings. You will be using it. There's almost no excuse for not using it. There's just such a large amount of them in the game that you can't really keep tabs on them. Like, I can't keep tabs on 100 people in my real fucking life. You think I'm gonna care about a video game? No. So I'm gonna have to look it up, but this is also explaining why there's CPU issues. When you have that many NPCs, the game is programming for all, or the game is running for every account of them in the game. Which, can you not load them in different areas? They're looking into ways to improve it, like they said at the very end here. But it's one of those that, do I have to know what every NPC in the entire game is doing at all times? Probably not. Do I get why they did it? Sure. They probably didn't have time. They were probably rushed. They probably released it too early. It is what it is. I just saw this and I wanted to cover it. There's not a lot to go into. They've said that they're going to fix everything everybody's complaining about. So that was my review. I actually wanted to talk about the gameplay. I was actually really impressed with what they did with the game for what it is. They didn't try to go crazy with it. It does give me open world Monster Hunter vibes, obviously with easier monsters, clearly, and different gameplay, but whatever. It's just, I don't know. I get the same vibe as when I play Monster Hunter or Baldur's Gate that I do with this game. And all the performance issues, whatever, that everybody talked about, didn't really diminish my experience. I know I might be a minority, but it's what I think. So it is what it is. If you've made it this far in the video, like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.